Keisha's fist connected with the man's jaw before she even thought about it. She didn't have time to think, just have to react. 3 men in black were dragging an elderly Korean woman toward a white van. The woman was screaming, kicking, fighting with everything she had. Security guards lay unconscious on the marble driveway, injury stains pooling beneath their heads. Keisha wasn't supposed to be here for this. She was just delivering a package, but the delivery pay was $50, half her rent for the week, and she wasn't about to walk away empty-handed. She'd already climbed the long driveway to this massive estate, already rang the doorbell 3 times with no answer, and she sure as hell wasn't going to stand by and watch 3 men kidnap an old woman. "Hey!" Keisha shouted, dropping her delivery bag. "Let her go!" The men turned. One of them laughed. "Mind your business, girl," he spat in broken English. Keisha's heart hammered in her chest, but her feet were already moving. She charged forward, her old taekwondo training kicking in, muscle memory from 3 years of classes when she was 18, never knowing this day will come where this skill will be in demand. She was 26 now, but her body still remembered. The first man lunged at her. Keisha sidestepped, grabbed his wrist, and used his own momentum to flip him onto the ground. He hit the pavement hard, groaning. The second man cursed and came at her fast, very fast. Keisha ducked under his swing with a calculated move, drove her elbow into his ribs, then swept his legs out from under him. He went down. The third man hesitated, his grip loosening on the elderly woman. "Run!" Keisha screamed at her. The woman didn't need to be told twice. She stumbled toward the mansion's front door, gasping for air. The third man let her go and turned on Keisha instead, his face twisted with rage. He was bigger, stronger. Keisha's breath caught. But before he could reach her, sirens wailed in the distance. The men cursed in Korean, scrambling toward the van. The engine roared to life and they sped away, tires screeching. Keisha stood there, chest heaving, hands shaking. Her knuckles were bleeding. Her uniform shirt was torn at the shoulder. What the hell just happened? The elderly woman stared at her from the mansion steps, eyes wide with shock and gratitude. You saved me," she whispered, her English thick with a Korean accent. "Who are you?" Keisha wiped the sweat from her forehead. "I'm nobody, ma'am. Just a delivery girl. Odd I was supposed to drop off a package here." Before the woman could respond, the roar of engines filled the air. Black SUVs, sleek, expensive, terrifying, screeched into the driveway, surrounding the estate like a military operation. Doors flew open. Men in dark suits poured out, armed and moving with calculated precision. And then he stepped out of the lead vehicle. Keisha's breath caught. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with broad shoulders filling out an immaculate black suit that's all shades of expensive. His dark hair was swept back perfectly, his face sharp and cold, like it had been carved from stone. But it was his eyes that stopped her. Dark, predatory, the kind of eyes that missed nothing. He scanned the scene, the unconscious guards, his shaken mother, and Keisha, standing in the middle of it all, bloodied but still standing. When his gaze locked onto Keisha, she felt it like a physical weight pressing down on her chest. What happened here? His voice was low, controlled, but there was rage simmering beneath it. His mother rushed toward him, clutching his arm. "Men tried to take me, Min-jae," she said, her voice trembling. "3 of them. They knocked out the guards. They were going to put me in a van." His jaw tightened. "Who dares to pull this off? Where are they?" "They ran when the sirens started, but—" The woman turned and pointed at Keisha. "She saved me. This girl. She fought them off." Min-jae's eyes slid back to Keisha. She stood straighter, trying not to look as terrified as she felt. "Who are you?" he asked. "Keisha. Keisha Amari." Her voice came out steadier than she expected. "I'm a delivery driver. I was supposed to drop off a package here. But when I arrived," she gestured at the mess around them, "this was happening." Min-jae studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to his men, his voice sharp as a blade. "Find them. I want names. I want locations. I want every single one of them in front of me by tomorrow morning." His men scattered immediately, moving with the efficiency of soldiers. The elderly woman tugged on Min-jae's sleeve. "Thank her, son." Min-jae looked at his mother, then back at Keisha. Something flickered in his eyes. Curiosity, maybe. Or respect. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a sleek black wallet. Without counting, he pulled out a thick stack of bills and held it out to Keisha. "Consider this gratitude," he said curtly. "Take it, leave, and forget you were ever here." Keisha hesitated, then took the money. Her hands were still shaking. It was far more than $50, far more than she'd make in a month. "Thank you," she whispered. Min-jae nodded once, then turned away, already barking orders into his phone. Keisha grabbed her delivery bag and walked toward the gate on legs that felt like jelly. She could feel his eyes on her the entire time. Before we proceed, family, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. And if you're hooked already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you're going to want to see where this story goes. Back at her tiny studio apartment, Keisha sat on her bed and counted the money with trembling hands. $5,000, enough to cover rent for 2 months, enough to buy groceries without checking her bank account first, enough to breathe. She stared at the bills, on her mind racing. Who was that man, and who was that woman? Keisha grabbed her phone and searched. Park Estate Seoul. Articles popped up immediately. Photos of sprawling mansions, charity galas, business deals, the Park family, wealthy, powerful, connected to half the businesses in Seoul. But there was something else. Rumors, whispers in the comment sections, words like untouchable and dangerous and don't cross them. Keisha's stomach twisted. She'd just saved a very important woman, and she had no idea what that meant. 3 days passed. Keisha went back to her normal routine, delivering packages, working shifts at a restaurant, barely sleeping because she had a target to meet. She tried to forget the mansion incident, the men in black, the cold-eyed man who'd handed her $5,000 like it was pocket change. But she couldn't shake the feeling that her action had triggered some things. On the 3rd night, Keisha was leaving her shift at the restaurant, walking through the dim alley behind the building, when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. A man stepped out of the shadows and made some mischievous sound. Keisha's blood ran cold. She recognized his voice immediately, one of the men from the mansion. "You shouldn't have interfered," he growled, his English broken but clear enough. He pulled a knife from his jacket. Keisha's heart stopped. She took a step back, her mind screaming at her to run because this is different from a fistfight like the other day, but her legs wouldn't move. The man stepped closer, the blade glinting in the streetlight. "You cost us everything by ruining our plan. Now you pay." Before Keisha could scream, a hand shot out from the darkness behind the man. It grabbed his wrist and twisted it. The sickening crack of bone echoed through the alley. The man screamed, the knife clattering to the ground. And then he stepped into the light. Park Min-jae. He looked exactly as he had 3 days ago, immaculate suit, cold eyes, face like carved stone, but now there was something else in his expression, fury. "Touch her again," Min-jae said quietly, his voice like ice, "and I'll cut off more than your hand." The man stumbled backward, clutching his broken wrist, and ran. Keisha stood frozen, her chest heaving, staring at Min-jae. "How did you—" she started. "You're being watched," Min-jae said flatly, cutting her off. "The men who attacked my mother know you interfered and marked your face. They won't stop until you're silenced." Keisha's stomach dropped. "What am I supposed to do?" Min-jae's gaze didn't waver. "Come work for me." Keisha blinked. "What?" "At my estate. As household staff, you'll be under my protection, and I'll pay you 10 times what you're making now." Keisha's mind reeled. 10 times her income. That was life-changing money. But working for him? For a man who broke someone's wrist without flinching? "Why would you do this?" she asked carefully. "Because you saved my mother and she asked me to keep you safe," Min-jae said. "And I don't refuse her." Keisha stared at him, her heart pounding. She thought about her tiny apartment, her endless shifts, the fear that had been clawing at her chest since the moment that man pulled the knife. She knows there is no better choice than this. "Okay," she said quietly. "Oh, I'll do it." Min-jae nodded once. "Pack your things. Someone will pick you up tomorrow morning. I'll make sure you are safe till then." And then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the night as quickly as he'd appeared. Keisha stood alone in the alley, her hands shaking. What had she just agreed to? The next morning, Keisha stood in front of the Park Estate with a single duffel bag slung over her shoulder. The mansion looked even more intimidating in daylight. towering gates, marble columns, gardens that stretched as far as she could see. A woman in a crisp uniform opened the door and gestured for Keisha to follow. Inside, the estate was even more overwhelming. Chandeliers, polished floors, armed guards stationed at every corner. Keisha felt completely out of place. Mrs. Park appeared at the top of the grand staircase, and her face lighting up when she saw Keisha. "You came," she said warmly, hurrying down the steps. She pulled Keisha into a tight hug. Thank you for agreeing to stay." Keisha smiled weakly. "Thank you for having me, ma'am." But as Mrs. Park led her through the estate, introducing her to the other staff, Keisha noticed the stares, cold, hostile, whispered conversations that stopped the moment she walked by. She was the first black person to work in this house, and they weren't happy about it. Keisha's stomach twisted. She'd walked into a lion's den, and she had no idea how she was going to survive. Keisha's first week at the Park estate was hell. The other staff didn't speak to her unless they had to. When they did, their words were clipped, cold, dripping with barely concealed contempt. They gave her the worst jobs, scrubbing floors on her hands and knees, cleaning bathrooms, hauling heavy laundry up 3 flights of stairs while they watched and whispered, accidentally spilling coffee on her uniform, forgetting to tell her about schedule changes so she'd show up late and get scolded, leaving her out of meal breaks. Keisha worked twice as hard for half the respect, biting her tongue, keeping her head down. But Mrs. Park stayed close. She invited Keisha to tea every afternoon, asking about her day, her life, her dreams. She praised Keisha in front of the other staff, introduced her to guests as the brave young woman who saved my life. It only made the jealousy worse. One of the maids, a woman named Jisoo, glared at Keisha every time Mrs. Park smiled at her. "She treats you like your family," Jisoo hissed one day as they folded linens. "You've been here 1 week. Some of us have worked here for years." Keisha kept her eyes on the sheets. "I didn't ask for special treatment." "You didn't have to," Jisoo snapped. "You just had to show up." Keisha said nothing. She knew better than to fight back, but she felt the weight of their hatred every single day. She had no choice because this is far better than juggling 2 jobs for lower pay, and all she just needs to endure now and hope it gets better. On Friday evening, everything got worse. A sleek black car pulled up to the estate, and a woman stepped out. She was stunning, tall, polished, dressed in a cream-colored designer dress that was auctioned last week as a limited edition. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. She moved through the estate like she owned it. The staff bowed immediately. Keisha watched from the hallway, confused. "Who is that?" she whispered to one of the younger maids. The girl's eyes widened. "That's Seo Hana, Mr. Park's fiancé." Keisha's stomach dropped. Fiancé? Of course he had a fiancé. A man like Park Min-jae wouldn't be single. Hana swept into the sitting room where Mrs. Park was waiting. Keisha hung back, pretending to dust a nearby table, but she could hear every word. "Mother Park," Hana said warmly, kissing the older woman's cheek. "You look wonderful." "Thank you, dear," Mrs. Park said, though her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "How have you been?" "Busy, as always. Planning the engagement party. You know how it is." Mrs. Park nodded politely, but Keisha noticed the tension in her shoulders. Then Hana's gaze slid to Keisha. Her smile turned sharp. "And who is this?" Mrs. Park stood. "This is Keisha. She's the young woman I told you about, the one who saved my life." Hana's eyes narrowed just for a moment, before her smile returned. "How? I see," she said, her tone sweet as poison. "You must be very brave for a delivery girl." "I just did what anyone would do," Keisha said quietly. "Not anyone," Hana said, stepping closer. "Most people would have run, but you stayed. How interesting." There was something in her voice that made Keisha's skin crawl. Hana turned back to Mrs. Park. "Well, I'm sure she's settling in nicely, though I do hope the staff is treating her well. It can be difficult being the outsider." The threat was clear. Mrs. Park's jaw tightened. "Keisha is under my protection. Anyone who mistreats her will answer to me." Hana's smile didn't waver. "Of course, Mother Park. I wouldn't dream of it." But when Hana's eyes met Keisha's again, there was nothing but ice. The next day, things escalated. Keisha was cleaning one of the guest bedrooms when Hana appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. "We need to talk," Hana said. Keisha straightened, gripping the duster in her hand. "About what?" Hana stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "I don't know what game you're playing," she said, her voice low and dangerous, "but I see right through you." Keisha's heart pounded. "I'm not playing any game. You save Mrs. Park, and suddenly you're living here, eating at her table, getting special treatment." Hana's eyes flashed. "You think I don't know what you're doing? You think I don't see the way you look at him? I don't—" "Stay away from Min-jae," Hana interrupted, her voice like a blade. "He's mine. This family is mine, and if you try to take what's mine, I will destroy you." Keisha met her gaze, refusing to back down. "I'm just here to work and be protected at this difficult time." Hana laughed, cold and bitter. "We'll see how long that lasts." She turned and left, slamming the door behind her. Keisha stood there, her hands shaking. She'd made an enemy. 2 days later, Hana struck. Keisha was called into Min-jae's office. He sat behind his massive desk, his expression unreadable. Hana stood beside him, her face the picture of concern. On the desk between them was a diamond necklace. Keisha's stomach dropped. "This was found in your room," Min-jae said, his voice cold. "Care to explain?" Keisha's mind raced. "I've never seen that before." "It's mine," Hana said softly, her eyes glistening with fake tears. "It was a gift from Min-jae. I've been looking for it for days, and now it turns up in her room." "I didn't take it," Keisha said firmly, looking Min-jae in the eye. "I swear I didn't." Min-jae's jaw tightened. "Theft is not tolerated in this house. Nobody has dared to even try such." "I didn't steal anything." "Then how did it get into your room? I know there is something off about you," Hana demanded, her voice rising. Before Min-jae could respond, the door opened. Mrs. Park walked in, her face set in stone. "What is going on here?" she demanded. Hana turned to her, dabbing at her eyes. "Mother Park, I hate to say this, but Keisha stole my necklace. It was found in her room." Mrs. Park looked at the necklace, then at Keisha, then at Hana. "I gave her that necklace," Mrs. Park said calmly. The room went silent. Hana's face paled. "What?" "I gave it to Keisha as a gift," Mrs. Park continued, her voice like steel. "Yesterday. So unless you're calling me a liar, Hana, I suggest you apologize." Hana's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Min-jae's eyes flicked between his mother and his fiancé, his expression darkening. I must have been mistaken," Hana stammered, forcing a smile. "I'm so sorry, Keisha, I didn't know." "Clearly," Mrs. Park said coldly. Hana excused herself quickly, her face burning with humiliation. When she was gone, Mrs. Park turned to Keisha and squeezed her hand. "Don't let her intimidate you," she said softly. "You belong here." But Keisha saw the look in Min-jae's eyes, and he didn't believe his mother. Not completely, and Keisha knew Hana would never forgive her for this. Over the next 2 weeks, Keisha started noticing things. Hana was always on her phone, whispering in corners. She asked too many questions about Min-jae's schedule, where he was going, who he was meeting, when he'd be back. One night, Keisha was walking past one of the sitting rooms when she heard Hana's voice. She stopped, pressing herself against the wall. "The shipment comes in on Tuesday," Hana whispered into her phone. "Make sure your men are ready. He'll be distracted with the meeting downtown. That's your window." Keisha's blood ran cold. She peeked around the corner. Hana was alone, pacing, her face tight with tension. "I don't care what it takes," Hana hissed. "Just get it done. And make sure no one traces it back to me." She hung up and walked out, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Keisha stood frozen, her heart hammering. Hana was working with someone dangerous. Keisha couldn't sleep that night. She knew she had to tell Min-jae. But how? He was terrifying, unapproachable. She'd barely spoken to him since she arrived, and telling him his fiancé was a traitor, that would get on his nerves, humiliate him, crush his ego. What if he didn't believe her? What if he thought she was lying out of jealousy? But then Keisha overheard another conversation. This time it was worse. "The attack is set for Friday," Hana said into her phone. He'll be at the docks, alone. Tell Woo Bin this is his chance. Keisha's hands shook. An attack. On Min Jae. She couldn't stay silent anymore. Keisha found Min Jae in his office late that night. She knocked, her heart pounding. "Enter," his voice called. She stepped inside. He was sitting at his desk, papers spread in front of him, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He looked up, surprised. "What do you want?" Keisha's mouth went dry. "I need to tell you something, about Hana." His expression darkened immediately. "What about her?" "She's working with your enemies. I heard her on the phone. She's been feeding them information. And..." Keisha swallowed hard. "She's planning an attack on you this Friday." For a moment, Min Jae just stared at her. Then his face twisted with rage. He stood, slamming his hand on the desk. "You dare accuse her?" His voice was like thunder. "After everything I've done for you? After I brought you into my home? It kept you safe? I'm telling the truth." "Enough!" Min Jae shouted. "Just because mother like you think you can play games with me? You think you can manipulate me?" "I'm not lying." "Get out," he said, his voice deadly calm. "As for what you did for my mother, we're even now. But if you ever accuse Hana again, you'll regret it. This is your last warning. Now get out of my sight." Keisha's eyes burned with unshed tears. She turned and left, her chest aching. He didn't believe her. But that night, Min Jae couldn't sleep. Keisha's words echoed in his mind. He thought about Hana, her questions, her phone calls, the way she always seemed to know things she shouldn't. The next morning, Min Jae tested her. "There's a shipment coming in tomorrow," he said casually over breakfast. "High value. I'm moving it myself." Hana's eyes flickered. "Where?" "The old warehouse on the east side." She nodded, her smile tight. "Be careful." But Min Jae saw it. The hesitation, the stutter in her voice. His world tilted. Min Jae set a trap. He's trying to prove once again why he is the undisputed mafia boss in the city. He leaked fake information to Hana, a decoy shipment, a fake location. And he waited. Hana took the bait and updated the rival gang about the location change. On Friday night, the rival gang attacked the warehouse in full force, but they fell to the ambush of Min Jae and his men, waiting with a way bigger force than them. They captured everyone, including Hana, caught on a phone call with the rival gang boss Jang Woo Bin. When Min Jae walked into the warehouse and saw her, his face was carved from ice. "Tell me everything," he said quietly. Hana's mask shattered. She fell to her knees, sobbing. "I didn't have a choice," she cried. "My family. They're loyal to Woo Bin. They made me do this. I never wanted to hurt you." Min Jae's voice was colder than death. "You chose this. Now you pay." He turned to his men. "Take her, all of them. Turn them over to the authorities with full evidence." Hana screamed as she was dragged away. Min Jae found Keisha in the garden, sitting alone. She looked up when she heard his footsteps. "You were right," he said quietly. Keisha stood. "I know. I should have listened to you. I'm sorry." It was the first time she'd ever heard him apologize. "I was just trying to help," she said softly. "You did more than that," Min Jae said, his eyes meeting hers. "You saved my life." The next morning, Min Jae called a household meeting, and every single staff member gathered in the grand hall, maids, cooks, guards, drivers, everyone. They stood in nervous silence, whispering among themselves, confused about why they'd been summoned. Keisha stood at the back, her heart pounding. She had no idea what was happening. Then Min Jae entered. The room fell silent immediately. He stood at the front, his presence commanding, his expression unreadable. Mrs. Park sat in a chair beside him, a knowing smile on her face. Min Jae's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Many of you have been with this family for years. You've served loyally. You've earned your place here." The staff nodded, still confused. "But loyalty isn't just about how long you've been here," Min Jae continued, his eyes scanning the room. "It's about character. It's about doing what's right. And even when it's difficult." His gaze found Keisha. "Keisha Amari has been here less than a month, but in that time, she has saved my mother's life twice, once from kidnappers, and once from a traitor living under my own roof." Gasps rippled through the room. Jisoo's face went pale. Because of her vigilance, her courage, and her loyalty, my family is safe. My operations are secure, and my enemies are destroyed. Min-jae's voice grew stronger. Effective immediately, Keisha Amari is no longer household staff. She is a respected member of this family. She will be treated with the same honor and dignity that comes with it. He paused, his eyes sweeping across the stunned faces. Anyone who disrespects her, anyone who mistreats her, anyone who so much as looks at her the wrong way, answers to me personally. So is that understood? The room erupted in unanimous agreement. Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Park. Jisoo bowed deeply, her face burning with shame. Mrs. Park stood and walked to Keisha, pulling her into a tight embrace. Welcome to the family, my dear, she whispered. Keisha's eyes filled with tears. She'd never felt so seen, so valued in her entire life. Min-jae watched her from across the room, something softening in his cold eyes. Over the next few weeks, everything changed. The staff treated Keisha with respect, some genuine, some out of fear, but respect nonetheless. She was given her own suite in the main house, with a view of the gardens. She no longer scrubbed floors or hauled laundry. Instead, she spent her days with Mrs. Park, learning about the family, helping with charity work, and slowly becoming part of something she'd never had before, a family. But the biggest change was Min-jae. He sought her out, not as a boss, not as a protector, as a man. One evening, Keisha was reading in the library when Min-jae walked in. May I join you? He asked. Keisha looked up, surprised. Of course. He sat across from her, silent for a moment, just watching her. I owe you more than an apology, he finally said. I owe you my life, my family's safety, everything. You don't owe me anything, Keisha said softly. I just did what was right. That's exactly why I want to know you better, Min-jae said, leaning forward. You're not like anyone I've ever met. You don't want power. You don't want money. You just want to help people. Keisha smiled. Is that so strange? In my world? Yes. Min-jae's expression grew serious. I've spent my whole life surrounded by people who want something from me. Power, connections, status. But you? You asked for nothing. I didn't need to, Keisha said. You already gave me more than I could have asked for. Min-jae's eyes softened. I want to know you, Keisha. Your story, your dreams, everything. Keisha's heart fluttered. Why? Because you make me want to be better, he said quietly. You make me want to be the kind of man who deserves someone like you. Over the following weeks they talked, late nights in the library, long walks through the estate gardens, quiet dinners where Min-jae asked her about her childhood, her struggles, the things that made her who she was. Keisha saw a side of him no one else did. He wasn't just the feared mafia boss. He was a man who loved his mother fiercely. A man who had been betrayed so many times he'd stopped trusting people. A man who carried the weight of an empire on his shoulders and never let anyone see him break. But with Keisha, he let his guard down. He felt safe. He laughed, smiled. He let his feelings known like a normal human should do. And Keisha was falling for him. One evening, Min-jae found Keisha on the terrace, watching the sunset over Seoul. Can I ask you something? He said, standing beside her. Anything. Do you regret it? Coming here? Leaving your old life behind? Keisha thought about it. Her tiny apartment, her endless shifts, the loneliness that had followed her everywhere. No, she said honestly. I don't regret it at all. Min-jae turned to face her fully. Then let me ask you something else. Keisha's breath caught at the intensity in his eyes. Will you give me a chance? He asked, his voice raw, vulnerable. To prove that I'm worthy of you? To show you that I can be the man you deserve? Keisha's heart raced. Min-jae, I know I'm not easy, he continued. I know my world is dangerous. I know I'm broken in ways I don't even understand yet. But when I'm with you, I feel like I can be better, like I can be whole. Keisha reached out and took his hand. You don't have to prove anything to me, she said softly. You already have. Min-jae's eyes searched hers. Does that mean? Yes, Keisha whispered. I'll give you a chance. I'll give us a chance. Min-jae pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. And for the first time in years, Keisha felt like she was home. 3 months later, Min-jae took Keisha back to the garden where they'd had their first real conversation. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Mrs. Park watched from the terrace, her eyes shining with joy. Min-jae turned to Keisha, taking both her hands in his. "I told you once that you saved my mother's life," he said. "But the truth is, you saved mine too." Keisha's eyes filled with tears. "Before you, I was just surviving, going through the motions, building an empire but feeling empty inside." His voice broke slightly. "You gave me something I thought I'd lost forever. Hope." He dropped to one knee. Keisha gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Min-jae pulled out a small velvet box and opened it. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, breathtaking. "Keisha Amari," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "You are the strongest, bravest, most beautiful person I've ever known. I don't deserve you, but I'm selfish enough to ask anyway." Tears streamed down Keisha's face. "Will you marry me?" Keisha dropped to her knees in front of him, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Min-jae slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms, kissing her like she was his oxygen. From the terrace, Mrs. Park clapped, tears of joy streaming down her face. The household staff, who had been watching from the windows, erupted in applause. 6 months later, the wedding took place. It was beautiful, a perfect blend of Korean and African traditions. Keisha wore a stunning white gown for the ceremony, then changed into a vibrant traditional dress honoring her heritage, and finally into a gorgeous hanbok that made Mrs. Park very emotional. Min-jae stood at the altar in a perfectly tailored black suit, his eyes never leaving Keisha. When it was time for the vows, Min-jae's voice was strong and clear. "Keisha, you walked into my life when I least expected it. You fought for my family when you had no reason to. You saw the man I could be, not the monster everyone else sees. You are my home, my heart, my everything, and I promise to spend the rest of my life being worthy of you." Keisha's tears fell freely. "Min-jae, you gave me a family when I had nothing. You protected me when I was afraid. You showed me what it means to be truly loved. You are my peace, my strength, my forever, and I promise to stand by your side no matter what comes." They kissed as husband and wife, and the room erupted in cheers. 1 year later, Keisha stood in the garden of the Park estate watching the sunset. Min-jae came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured. "How much my life has changed," Keisha said softly. "A year and a half ago, I was just trying to survive. And now, Min-jae prompted, "now I have everything I ever dreamed of." She turned in his arms, looking up at him. "I have you. I have your mother. I have a home, a family, a purpose." Min-jae cupped her face in his hands. "I never thought I'd find this. Someone who saw past the darkness. Someone who loved me anyway." "I don't love you anyway," Keisha corrected gently. "I love you because of who you are, all of you, the protector, the son. The man who would burn the world down for the people he loves." Min-jae kissed her forehead. "I would, you know. Burn it all down for you." "I know," Keisha whispered, "but you don't have to, because we already have everything we need." From the house, Mrs. Park's voice called out, "Dinner is ready, and you two better come inside before the food gets cold." Keisha laughed. Min-jae smiled, a real, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. "Come on," he said, taking her hand. "Let's go home." They walked toward the house together, hand in hand, surrounded by the life they'd built. Keisha looked up at the sky one last time, thinking about the girl she used to be, struggling, alone, just trying to make it through each day. That girl had delivered a package to a mansion. That girl had saved a woman's life without knowing it would change everything. That girl had fought when she could have run. And that girl had found her happily ever after, not because a prince saved her, but because she saved herself. And in doing so, she saved him too. And that's Keisha and Min-jae's story, family. From a delivery driver fighting for survival to the respected wife of Seoul's most powerful man. What a journey. If you made it all the way to the end, Drop a comment and tell me, what was your favorite moment? When Keisha fought off those kidnappers, when she exposed Hana, or that beautiful proposal in the garden? And listen, if this story touched your heart, do me a huge favor. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and turn on those notifications so you never miss the next story. I've got more Afro-Korean romance coming your way, more mafia kings, more powerful CEOs, more strong black women finding love in the most unexpected places. Your support keeps this channel alive, family. Every like, every comment, every share helps me bring you more stories. So thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for believing in love stories like this. Until next time, stay blessed, stay loved, and keep believing in your own happily ever after, because it's out there waiting for you.